Stereo Cory,
Hey.
my guy,
Close my closet here.
the legend.
How's it going, y'all?
What's up, handsome?
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
doing well.
Sorry the meeting was so difficult to enter.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, good. All right, excellent. Well, now that I have you all here, again, thank you so much for carving out some time this afternoon to talk about this. I was talking to Hamoon and Cameron a little earlier that, when I first saw Opaque, not only do the lyrics just kind of like reach out and grab you, but also the visuals. And I just want to start out by asking, what was the inspiration? What is the message behind the single?
Yeah.
Well, Opaque it's about not tokenizing marginalized people. It's about making sure that oppressed peoples everywhere are seen for who they are, not for being, the token Black friend, or not for being the person responsible for changing the world, but rather someone that is a human being trying to make a conscious effort. For us, we especially felt it was very timely to release Opaque when we did, as to add our voice to amplify the Black Lives Matter movement. And although the song is incredibly relevant to what's going on in the world today, it's, I'll be the first to say I wish it wasn't so. I wish that we didn't have to continue to make music to talk about these things, and I wish that we saw these things solved. But as long as there are issues, we'll always be writing songs like Opaque.
Yeah, it's I had to wonder, because it is so on the nose to what is going on in the world right now. Not only, you have visuals of like making bread in there, like everyone is doing. You have you, Cameron, running down the street. Was this song created out of what's been going on in the world, or was it created kind of before the pandemic, before this movement in the country really took off, and it just so happened to, echo beautifully what's going on?
Yeah, we wrote Opaque actually a few years ago. And I think that's a testament to how the status quo hasn't changed enough. When we released this song, it was very mindful that these efforts, and especially these efforts surrounding Black lives and brown lives and marginalized lives everywhere, it was very mindful that this isn't a new message. This isn't some new issue. But it's incredibly important that we continue to remind people and highlight the importance of that issue, so it doesn't get swept to the wayside, so it doesn't get destigmatized, so people don't get fatigued from listening to it and turn from fatigue from working for a day where marginalized people are no longer oppressed. So for us, it was something that's definitely been in the vault for a second, and particularly because we're trying to be very mindful that these are issues that we're going to have to continue to fight to change the world for.
And why was it important to include imagery of the pandemic along with the protests? I saw, in an interview in one of the articles I read about you guys, about how, the song is about marginalized people, especially those in the Black and brown community, and the pandemic is hitting the Black and brown community not in proportion to, what it should be. Was that important to include, guys?
Absolutely. For us, the music video, when we were putting it together, was not only trying to make sure we were nailing down the message that's within Opaque, the song itself, but also articulate how all these conditions with what's going on in the world today also affects Black and brown lives. The same way that Black and brown people are affected drastically differently because they don't have the same access to resources because of COVID, along with also fighting for people to acknowledge that their lives matter. It's two simultaneous issues that kind of agitate each other, but are also really important to highlight because they're both issues that affect marginalized people.
Now, I want to talk about these images and videos that I got from Janine of you guys performing in CHOP. I've seen them elsewhere too. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier. For a band used to performing live, I could only imagine that not only was this a meaningful performance about where it was in the moment of history, but I'm sure it just felt good to be on stage again.
Yeah, Moon, you wanna hit this one?
Yeah, no, it was definitely, like, looking back on that, it's something I'm definitely going to be looking back on proudly, and like looking back on with a lot of pride, because I think it was a very important time, and just getting that entire event set up and getting all those speakers out there, I think that was very impactful. And like you were saying, it definitely did feel very good to be out on that stage again. But I think that kind of goes back to the centralized message for us, where we weren't out there just to play. We were out there to actually spread a message and try to share these marginalized voices and try to get their voices heard. And it was more about that than any kind of performance, I would say. And I think that's kind of the thing to get from it, that it ain't a picnic. Yeah.
Yeah, I found the event like super empowering, like to be able to amplify Black voices in a space where, you know, the precinct right behind us, you know, it's historic to be able to kind of it's accumulation of what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. I had the honor of speaking as part of the event, and it was pretty amazing to be able to speak my story with my experience with police and mental health, and kind of bringing it together with Black lives and amplifying those voices.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have not only do you know, talk the talk, you guys walk the walk, you have a nonprofit for surrounded by mental health, like you had just mentioned, Cory. And I could imagine that, you know, I've listening to a lot of people share their stories over the past few weeks, talking about the trauma of interactions with police, and even the trauma experienced during this protest. Why is it important to you guys to use your platform for activism in general, but especially, you know, for mental health?
Personally, I see it as when you have that kind of power and you're able to make those kind of changes, and like, even if we're not able to make those, like, I don't think we're going to change the world overnight, but having any kind of power and any kind of influence, I feel like you have to use that towards the kind of good that you believe in. Otherwise, it's just going to waste.
Yeah.
And as someone living with mental illness, I can say that, you know, looking back and being a kid, like wondering, just thinking I'm alone, you know, and for now to have a platform to be a part of this amazing band, and it gives me hope to be able to tell, you know, young people, hey, you're not alone. Like, this is something that a lot of people deal with, and this is something that we need to talk about. So to me, it's a matter of like bringing that inspiration, like looking back at my younger self and saying, hey, like, there's people out there, like, don't give up. So yeah, it's very empowering to be able to just like share our stories, you know, and the whole band just being focused on social justice as well. It's just yeah, it's super important.
I also think it's critical to articulate that all of these things wrap together. That for King Youngblood, especially as a band fronted by 3 brown dudes, for us, intersectionality has always been woven into what we do. It's always been something that we center and push forward in our music, in our shows, in any project that we're a part of, but especially our activism. Our nonprofit, Hold Your Crown, is centered around changing the culture around youth mental illness and centering youth mental wellness and the path to it. And specifically with This Ain't a Picnic, when talking about defunding the police and talking about the experiences of the marginalized, mental health wraps into that as well. It's something that I think we still have a long way to go in changing the culture about how mental health is really seen as another element of marginalization, especially in terms of Black and brown people not having as much access to mental health care. But laying that on top of the trauma that comes from living in a country that is designed against you is something that we have to highlight, and something that especially King Youngblood feels very seriously about highlighting, which is not only why we put on This Ain't a Picnic, but part of why we put an entire nonprofit together as well. It's all interrelated.
Yeah. And, you know, when like spending, you know, an afternoon, if, you know, walking through CHOP, the thing that strikes you is all the artwork. All the protest artwork, from the Black Lives Matter mural to the painted boards on the concrete barriers. It seems like art has been such a big part of this movement, and especially with Opaque and your guys' performance, your releasing of the single to move the movement forward. What role does art play during this time in our country right now?
I feel that art has always had a very important part in any kind of, I don't want to use like the word revolution, but like and any kind of change of.
You could call it what it is.
Well, no, I mean, no, I'm just saying like, you can call that what it is now, but I'm saying like, even in the past, any kind of change of state is always followed by some sort of art, whether it's painting, whether it's like, because art is like, it's the encapsulation of the culture of the time period. So I feel art is needed to be able to push the message forward, especially in these places where brown and Black voices are so marginalized. I feel like it's very important to push these voices forward, because it really shows the lives that they're living in and the experiences that they have, and it really highlights the issues that a lot of us don't necessarily have to experience, and it allows us to really get perspective on a lot of things. And I feel like art just really allows people to express themselves in ways that they wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Yeah, especially on that note of expression. If there's anything artists are really good at doing, it's in expressing messages in very accessible ways. I'm a communications major over at UW, so I'm a big snob about analyzing that the message impacts the medium and the medium impacts the message. And that's why it's so critical to have different types of artists be a part of a movement. Not only because that spreads out the platform and awareness of the movement as well, and spreading information a part of it, but different artists are able to articulate and express in different ways that might be more accessible to particular people. So for us, especially with This Ain't a Picnic, it's why we really wanted to have a diverse range of not just speakers, but also artists too, to talk through and impact different people in different ways. Just like the same way where a poster saying Black Lives Matter will impact you differently than a song about Black Lives Matter. They both have the same point, but for different people, that it may influence them in different ways to actually join the movement.
Now, what, you know, going back to Opaque, the music video, you know, some of the emotions that I picked up on, you know, frustration, exhaustion, you know, trying to break free and to be seen. Can you walk through some of the messages that you, or like the emotions that you really want people to connect with in that music video?
Yeah, I think especially on emotional level and on a message level, I think what we're especially trying to articulate on the mental health side of things is that different people are going through this differently. Different people have to have different outlets for how their emotions or their mental health might be going, not only in the midst of a pandemic, but also in the midst of trying to change the world around them. Trying to change their reality is difficult, and especially straining on your mental health. So the way that you might have to work through that can take different forms. Maybe it's smashing a cello. Maybe it's finding yourself on a walk constantly, and maybe even that is contributing to the isolation. Maybe it's trying to be active, and maybe it's trying to reanalyze yourself. I think the whole point that we were trying to articulate isn't a particular emotion so much as it is the importance of acknowledging the validity of those emotions and trying to tackle them so you're able to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I think even like when we were filming, like coming together for the first time in like 2 or 3 months, and also just coming together in this broken world and all these things happening, like you can really see through the video like our emotions that we were experiencing right then and there.
Yeah.
For me to be able to smash a cello was so, it felt so good to just be able to, because cello is so important to me, and it felt like a symbol to like just smash it, you know, and it felt like that's what is happening to me in my voice. So to just be able to express that feeling was so empowering, and just our social distancing, and it was just such a amazing experience, and I think that really shows through the video.
Yeah, it really does. And you know, as we look at this movement in Seattle, it's not going away anytime soon. We still have people hitting the streets every night. We still see activists on different platforms. Where does the movement go from here with your guys' role? Where are we going to see King Youngblood pop up next?
Yeah, so we have a few projects that we're in the works on right now. We're actually shooting a music video for the acoustic version of Opaque on Thursday. You know, if people are curious about more information about when we're releasing it, you know, just please follow us on the socials, and you'll probably know even before we do. My dad, I'm a second generation Black activist. My dad was a member of the Black Panther Party. And now he works running a community radio station, KVRU, on the South Side, where I'm also going to be prepping a new radio show over there with a few friends of mine that are also big activists, Jaden Grayson and Stay Safe Knox, called The Revolution Will Be Harmonized, where we'll be talking about specific we'll be talking about specific issues related to the movement, and kind of in a round table conversation, highlighting Black voices, while simultaneously the show will have playlists and things that run through it to highlight Black artists, Black musicians, and other Black speakers around the country. Trying to start staying local here and then expanding that further as we go on. And then additionally, we're also working on our relaunch of the Make Your Voice Heard Loud campaign. Moon, do you want to tell her a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Back in 2018, we did a campaign where we went around a lot of schools, high schools and a lot of colleges, where we just went around and helped young adults get registered to vote, actually. And we managed to get over like 3,000 kids to register to vote, which was awesome. And we were going to relaunch that. And given the circumstances, obviously things are a little different. We can't be going around to every school and getting people to sign up. So we're going to kind of launch like an online campaign. And we're getting the logistics of that worked out right now. But we were getting a lot of informational things and a lot of just resources for people around the country to be able to have better access to voting and better access to voting information, pretty much. So to pretty much help improve voting numbers and just voting knowledge in general for a lot of people who are left out of the picture in those senses.
Yeah, and especially highlighting that is like the importance of voting along with those other ways to fight and push the movement. You know, voting also with protesting, also with having those difficult conversations about accountability with your folks. Just trying to make sure that we're also highlighting that although trying to highlight that voting is another essential piece to changing the world.
And you know, moving forward with this movement, what do you guys want people to keep in mind as we see, you know, more art, we see more stuff from you guys released, we see more protests in the street? What do you think is important for people to realize about what's happening in Seattle right now?
I don't know. I think it's important. I think people see things like CHOP getting shut down and things like that, and they see that, oh, the fight is ending and there's not any point to continue. But I think it's important to see, and it's important to listen to and highlight these people who are still fighting and saying these important things, because a lot of people kind of discredit the movement and they hold it up to these symbols where it's like, oh, we had CHOP and now CHOP is gone, so the movement's gone. But that's not true at all. It's a lot of these people are
CHOP was
still
never the goal.
Yeah, exactly. CHOP was never the movement. CHOP was never the goal. Like, that was just one keystone in the process. And I think people got to remember that the fight's not letting up, whether or not you want to be a part of it or not. The fight's going to keep going, and you just got to recognize that you can be part of it and you can help if you really do desire to.
Mm.
And I think it's also important to continue that education. You know, this is something that Black and Brown lives like experience every day. So the fight isn't going to end for us. So continue that education, and also just support Black and Brown artists is super important for that movement as well.
Yeah. If I had any, thoughts about it, it would be fight to know justice. Our demands aren't fully yet met. We still have to hold people accountable. We still have a lot of work to do, but also to be mindful that you have to pace yourself. You can't do everything all at one time. So span yourself out, make sure to use resources around you to make sure you're not getting into protest fatigue, because those things are truly detrimental to pushing a movement forward. So reach out to your community to get help when you need it, so that way you can keep moving the ball forward. Keep holding people accountable, keep fighting where you can, whether that's donating, whether that's signing petitions, whether that's joining protests, whether that's supporting Black and Brown artists, whether that's paying reparations, whatever it is, keep it moving in a way that works best for you, but don't let up on it, because again, there is so much work to do to continue the fight to know justice.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. And now I just want to go around and ask you guys just to say your names, what you do in the band, and also tell me a little bit about how you guys got started as a band, how long you've been together.
Sure. I'm Cameron Lavi Jones. I'm the founding member, lead vocal, and guitarist for King Youngblood.
My name is Hamoon Milaninia, and I play bass for King Youngblood. And Cory?
My name is Cory Cavazos, and I play electric cello for King Youngblood and acoustic on recorded stuff. And I'm also the executive director of King Youngblood's Hold Your Crown.
The way that we came together, it feels like so long, my man.
Yeah.
The way that we came together was King Youngblood. The project itself had a different name, but the group itself and the whole project has been around for coming up on like 11 years now.
I think so, yeah.
God, I started it really, really early back in middle school with a couple of orchestra friends. My homie Blair Ziegenhagel played cello, and they were the first cellist in our orchestra and the only cellist in our band. And with another friend, Taylor Wagner, and she played bass in the orchestra. That's how we met, through music programs over at the Shoreline School District. From there, as things went on, different people, when you're young, you are still finding your way and things like that. And ended up needing a bassist to fill in for a gig. And Hamoon was playing bass in the jazz band there over at Shorecrest High School. And since then, we just really hit it off. Played together with him for about, a year and a half. And then Cory hopped in the pocket.
Something like that, yeah.
But my folks used to run the Columbia City Theater. And Cory would pull up with his cello and a looper in the front room for like open mics and things like that. And it was just around like when our first cellist was, starting a different life path and just need to go in a different direction, which is obviously totally understandable. And my folks were like, yo, this Cory dude, like, you need to talk to him. And we exchanged information, and then just that first day of getting in the room and just jamming and playing off of each other. It was, with both of these dudes, it's kind of been love at first sight.
Definitely.
And since then, King Youngblood has been expanding, amplifying the voices of the marginalized, and pushing forward into the great unknown.
I like it. Has it always been a part of your band's DNA makeup to have activism along with the music you create?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that makes King Youngblood so powerful is the fact that it's 3 brown dudes. We know exactly what it's like not to belong. We know what it's like to feel that constant marginalization. So when we have spaces that we're able to curate for ourselves, like the stage or the studio, we absolutely use it because we know we don't have a lot of opportunities to do so. And I definitely think it makes us not only tighter as, a band of brothers, but also makes our music way more focused on intersectionality than if we were somebody else.
Well, is there anything else you guys want to say about Opaque, what you guys are doing, as far as the movement or anything else that I might have missed?
Moon Core?
My only note would be keep your eyes peeled for the Make Your Voice Heard Loud and Vote campaign coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also just visit holdyourcrown.org. We have a couple things you can get involved in. We have a Speak Your Truth where you can tell your story, have that platform. And I also want to say just to thank all the people who are part of that project. And I know it's really hard to publicly come out and tell your story. So we just want to thank those participants.
Yeah. And I just want to thank the activists, organizers, and artists that were part of This Ain't a Picnic. Real Johnson of Prison Washington, Jaden Grayson, Danny Denial and Nate, Elijah Lewis of Africa Town, Beverly Crusher, Talea and Brandon Marsalis, my boy Cory, Shayna Shepard of Bear Axe, Katil, Nicole Swims of Black Ends, and Tay Phoenix for helping us organize an entirely BIPOC put together protest. And I encourage everybody to follow us on all the socials. Please listen to Opaque, and stay tuned for all of the different, not just activists, but artistic things that we have coming up in the future, because we have a lot of good stuff we're excited to share with everyone.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great to meet you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you play, whether it's on a Zoom call or an actual in-person show. I'll definitely be there.
Wonderful. Well, that might have to be in 2021, but we'll make it on the backstage pass.
If we're lucky. So
of course.
We'll see.